Welcome, and thank you for joining today's MLC's Masterclass as a part of our Future of Manufacturing project on transforming manufacturing from the C-suite to the shop floor, the power of human AI collaboration. Before we begin, we have just a few housekeeping items. We have muted all participant lines to maintain sound quality throughout the session, just to make you aware. But we always encourage asking questions at any point by placing them in the questions box or the general chat box. We will do our best to address all of your questions either during the session itself or during the Q&A portion of the event. Now, this session will also be recorded and will be sent to you via email within 48 hours or less of the session's conclusion. It will also be available on the Manufacturing Leadership Council website within 5 to 7 business days for you to share with your colleagues. And now, please welcome the Senior Director for the Manufacturing Leadership Council, Steve Moskowitz. Steve, I turn it over to you.
Thank you much, and welcome everybody, and thank you, Lauren. So welcome again, everybody, to our masterclass. Just a little bit about the Future of Manufacturing project before we begin. In the spring of 2021, the MLC, a division of the National Association of Manufacturers, launched the Future of Manufacturing project, formerly known as the Manufacturing 2030 project. The main goal of this project is to enable manufacturers to envision what manufacturing may look like in the future. Think 10, 20 years to the future. Realizing this goal entails thinking broadly about the context in which manufacturing will operate in the decades ahead, including population demographics, economic trends, and technology trends that will shape the industry. In addition to understanding the direction and velocity of technology trends associated with Manufacturing 4.0, the industry's transition to a digital mode of manufacturing. Perhaps most importantly, it entails identifying and understanding the challenges that we all face as the industry moves to this next phase of Manufacturing 4.0. Armed with these understandings, manufacturers can then better plan their longer-term future and find ways to enhance their value, competitiveness, and contribution to society. We want to thank all of our partners, including NTT Data, without whom all of this would not be possible. And that brings us to today's session. So we'll be talking about transforming manufacturing from the C-suite to the shop floor, the power of human AI collaboration. Before we kick that off, I want to show a quick video from NTT Data. Lauren? Alrighty, and I think I have my new playlist for going on the treadmill. Hopefully everybody's excited for our conversation today. And with that, I'd like to introduce our expert speakers from NTT Data North America. First, we have the Chief AI Officer, Wendy Collins. And next, we have the Vice President of Global Organizational Change Management Leader, Kim Curley. Wendy, Kim, welcome, and please join, say hello.
Hello. It's so great to always be with you, Steve. So thank you so much for inviting Kim and myself. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy, always good to be with you and with this group. We're excited for the conversation.
Excellent. So everybody on the call, you know that in the prep, we asked you for a couple of questions, and we'll talk through some of that data as we go through. But before we start, we actually want to start with another polling question. So if we could put that up and take a minute or so to respond here. There we go. So the question is, how are you currently using AI in your workplace? And I'll give you, 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds here to respond. We see the numbers popping up. Okay. All right, we got a lot of answers here. I think another second here, and we'll probably end the poll and show where we are. So how do you feel about AI in the workplace? And I think overwhelmingly can enhance productivity. Some have concerns, and there's a few who are still not quite sure, and we're trying to figure out where we are. So some interesting things coming on. So one of the things that we see is we have concerns. So as we address and deal with concerns, what does that really mean? So let's stop sharing that. Oh, there we go. And let's talk about how do we deal with concerns. And a lot of that's going to start with leadership. So manufacturing leaderships are going to be key to successful adoption. What steps should they take to really drive this implementation in a way that maximizes value, minimizes disruption, and helps us deal with some of those challenges and concerns people have? Kim, in your new organizational leadership role, let's get your thoughts first.
Great, thanks, Steve. And by the way, that's the first time that I have seen that poll done where I'm concerned about displacement. Got a big fat goose egg on the survey. I have never seen that happen before. So this is interesting. So our conversation today might go in slightly different arenas than I anticipated. Wendy and I always see some significant number of respondents being very concerned about job displacement. So that right off the bat tells me we've got a unique, interested, and curious participant group here today. So I hope this will be a lot of fun. So let's talk about leadership and organizational change management and why leaders are so critical to making sure that AI is adopted and adopted in a way that doesn't scare people about job displacement. So apparently I am preaching to the choir or preaching to the choir of leaders peoples or something like that on the call today. But the role of leadership really can't be underestimated. Making sure that there's a vested interest that is transparent and authentic and communicated across the workforce really makes a huge difference when you're talking about people starting to use a new technology and a new technology that can sometimes come with a feeling of threat associated with it. You know, people still are concerned about security and privacy and things like that. We should take all appropriate technological precautions. We should also take appropriate cautions in how people use it. So the more we can teach people about the different ways that you can use AI as a trusted colleague, not just a tool, but really a trusted colleague, particularly when we're talking about GenAI, somebody you can speak to, when we set the stage for inclusion in the workforce as a colleague, we really change the conversation. And leaders who do that are doing that and learning alongside their workforce at the same time. So they're really understanding for themselves and their workforce in their company, how can we use AI? What are the use cases that make sense for us to target inside our own organization? And then how do we go together to advance those use cases? By the way, one of the very best sources of use cases in the organization is all of the folks on the shop floor and all of the folks in the finance office and all of the workforce people who are thinking about ways that they can make their days better. But that engagement and learning alongside is really critical. Also, not being silent about what you're doing is really, really important. So having that leadership have the confidence to say, we're going to try this in this way and these things, and we're looking forward to this making your life easier and my life easier and our data better. We're looking forward to it helping us solve problems that are pain points for everyone in the workforce today. You know, really getting honest and transparent is one of the most important things that you can do as a leader pulling AI into the organization. Wendy, is there anything you'd add there?
Oh my gosh, everything you said is so spot on. You know, I love when I see leaders embrace curiosity because that telegraphs a message to the rest of the organization. It's okay to ask questions. And I think that is so important, especially when we're talking about generative AI. It's changing all the time and nobody knows all the answers. And it's okay to admit that. So telegraphing a message of curiosity, not a message of I know it all, I think is also really, really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love that. And I love the idea that you're co-creating and learning together. All levels of the organization are learning together. Sometimes we hear a lot about how people at the workshop level or the in the field level are learning AI, but we don't hear as much around how are our leaders learning about it. One of the questions y'all answered before you came on onto our webinar today was around how you're learning about AI. The huge percentage of you are really only doing it through your own self-guided education. You're finding simple courses that are available in the public sphere for you to take, and you're experimenting yourself. So just really that co-creation and that intellectual curiosity is really important. I read a quote just this morning from Adam Grant that I'm going to butcher, but it went something like, saying "I don't know" isn't a sign of weakness. It's a great signal of intellectual curiosity, and that curiosity is what moves companies forward.
For sure. And for those of you that follow me on LinkedIn, you probably saw a post from yesterday where Gartner's stat says that companies who invest in AI literacy and education for their executive team see a 20% increase in financial performance. So it's real. It's really important. It's real.
So one quick question on that, just to follow up around the role of leaders. You talked about, the executive team needing to have AI literacy and training. Kim, you talked about AI use cases for the leadership team. Should they be learning in parallel, or do leaders, sometimes they want to get ahead of the curve and they don't want to feel like they're exposing themselves in front of their teams with not having all the answers? So should leaders be kind of learning first, or should they be learning with their teams?
I would say both. I mean, look, I'm a chief AI officer and I don't have all the answers. I use actually AI to help me keep up with what's happening in AI. I kid you not. Every day I have a query that says, go tell me all of the latest announcements that came out today. So I think it's, I hate to say it, but it's a bit of a fool's errand to think that you won't be asked a question you don't know the answer to. Wait, did I get that right? Anyway, you get what I'm trying to say.
I love those double negatives.
I know, I shouldn't have done that. It's a fool's errand to think that you will have all the answers for a technology that is moving as quickly as possible. So there absolutely will be co-learning. And, part of, I think, being a transparent and a people-centric leader is owning that and recognizing it and being okay with it. And I think that telegraphs, again, I use that word, but it telegraphs a culture of constant curiosity and learning.
It really does. I can't double down on that enough. When we talk about the skills that are most in demand for the best leaders who lead the most successful companies, the ability to communicate and to create trust amongst the people that they have the honor of leading, those are the skill sets that are probably in most demand, translate to the best outcomes, and frankly are the ones we invest in the least. So really getting to the point where our leaders are very comfortable with themselves, they have a high level of EQ, they are comfortable being vulnerable, they are comfortable knowing their strengths and knowing the areas that they don't know. That co-creation is just really so important. The stronger the leader, chances are the more willing that they are to say, I don't know, and to learn along with. That sentence is often ordered in that way. I would tell you it should be ordered the other way. The more often you see somebody willing to say, I don't know, and learn alongside others, the stronger that leader is. I think that is a very important cue of strength of leadership.
That's great. I think one of the things we heard at our December conference was, trusted and transparent AI can only come through trusted and transparent leadership. And so they're definitely connected. Before we go on, we're going to open up another poll. And for folks putting questions in the Q&A, we will get to them throughout the day. So just keep adding your questions in. So I believe we have another poll. And this is the one, how we're using AI in the workplace today.
That so many people are participating in the poll. This is great. Really high participation. Thank you all.
Yeah, we'll give it another 5 or 6 seconds here.
I feel like we should be playing Jeopardy music or something sudden
You could
during
sing it.
that quiet moment.
You don't want to hear me sing though. Aaron, if you want to end the poll, we could show the results. All right, so we have a big mix here. Similar to what we saw, with people starting to use it and getting comfortable, it's a little bit all over the place. Kim, sorry, Wendy, we'll start with you. Any thoughts on kind of what you're seeing here and how this relates to what you've seen elsewhere?
I would say that I'm encouraged, especially by the fact that the I do not use AI in my workplace is in the single digits. If I remember correctly, even back at our December event, when I asked the question up on the stage, how many of you use AI in your workplace? There were lots of people who didn't have their hands up. So I am incredibly encouraged by that. And I think it's not unusual for the mix to be I use AI for specific tasks versus I use it for multiple aspects. Especially when I talk to manufacturing clients, folks are still learning how to take advantage of AI and specifically generative AI. And I noticed in the Q&A there was a question specifically about what is GenAI. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's not unusual to see that it's not prolific in its use yet, and that's okay. I'm just encouraged that it's being used at 30% for specific tasks and even almost 20% for more than one aspect in your work. So I'm tickled.
Great. Kim, anything to add?
I do think that specific use case point is a really good one. If you think about tools or apps or anything that you as an individual human out in the wild learn to use, you tend to come upon somebody telling you that X, Y, or Z worked really, really well for them in this specific scenario. It's that specific scenario that you hear about, are informed about, that encourages you or is the lowest barrier for you to try something new. So when you've got a friend telling you they used it to plan a vacation, or another friend saying they've used it for meal planning for their family, or Wendy who told me she used it to help with a Girl Scout project with her daughter, that gives you creativity sparks around how you might use it as well. And I think it is those specific use cases where you already have confidence that it's going to help you, which really drive then the creation or the ideation of additional use cases that come. It also expands your willingness to use the tool in different ways. So I've been thinking a lot about AI adoption as sort of like movement from adding numbers with a pencil and a piece of paper, and then we got a calculator and we checked it with a pencil and a paper, and then we got Excel and we checked it with our calculators, and now in Excel we're in every other tool on the planet. We've learned to use it for so many more things than the things that we originally learned it from. And I think AI is one of those things as well. I started using Excel because I needed to have a whole bunch of information in one place and be able to sort it easily and do mathematical computations on it. But now I use it for a whole lot of other things too. So I think that growth is expected as well. You'll probably see those numbers chase each other for a while.
Yeah, great point. All right, so we're going to stop that sharing here. So one of the things we saw in both those surveys, right, with the first one was people still not concerned, at least here, about displacement. Can we talk about that? But we also saw that we're starting to see AI used for specific use cases and people really adopting it. And so as we think about that, how do you really start to look towards the future and say, well, there are going to be certain use cases, certain examples where AI can do a better job and maybe we'll take over. So how can manufacturers start to design a human-centric AI strategy to empower employees and give them confidence that their jobs will continue to grow and evolve versus replacing AI? And how do they kind of develop that strategy most effectively? Wendy, we'll start with you here.
Yeah, I really love this question, and I'm encouraged, as we said at the beginning of the conversation, that many of our audience today is not as worried about displacement. But we're going to put this up on the web later, and if you are watching this and you are concerned about job displacement, I have a story to tell you that I think hopefully will give you pause and encouragement. We have a client that is a global real estate, property management, and construction company. And they, for the buildings that they have already built, they oftentimes also manage those buildings. And so, when you manage a building, you get all kinds of work orders. My sink is leaky, my door squeaks, the doorknob broke, whatever they are. And so this client came to us and said, look, we spend hours and hours and hours going through all of our maintenance work orders, ensuring what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, ensuring that they're classified properly, that we can report against them because one of their clients is the United States government. They have to be able to report against their performance in different areas, and that they closed those maintenance orders in a reasonable amount of time with the right solution. And so you would ordinarily think, if you were going to bring AI in, that it might actually be displacing someone's job who manually takes care of all of that classification and reporting and double checking that everything was done correctly. And certainly the AI solution that we built, which, by the way, was the combination of traditional AI and generative AI. So we used machine learning models to classify, and we used generative AI in order to bring that unstructured information where the human typed into the maintenance request, my light bulb is leaking water. Well, in what world do light bulbs leak water, right? But we were able to leverage generative AI to reverse infer from that, oh, that means that there is a leak above that's coming down through the light fixture, so on and so forth. So what we found, number one, is that our generative AI hybrid solution not only got 75% of the classifications correct, for the 25 that it didn't match what the human did, when we went back and looked at it with our client, it turns out that generative AI did a actually better job of doing it. Now, better in this case is great for the human that was doing that, because they don't want to be doing this work. They want to be doing other high value additive work that their engages their minds, not this manual administrative task. So a really great story for a client that, you might think, if you didn't hear the overlay about what the end user cared about, that it was in fact replacing jobs. In this case, it was replacing work that the human worker did not want to do.
Interesting. Kim, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic example. And I think we are going to see far more examples like that for some time in the arc of AI than we are other types of dramatic disruptions. And what I mean by that is, most of the AI tools and the AI things that we build for our clients, certainly, and others that are available out in the wild, replace, and Wendy said it, replace work. They replace tasks. They don't actually replace, at this point, entire jobs. They replace, as we sometimes talk about it, fingers and toes, the things that you do on the side or the things that you have to do after your shift ends so that you can be prepared to hand it off to the next shift, or the things that you do at, on your own time for many employees. So decreasing the amount of the extra work that is inside the job that you have can be dramatic and frankly life-changing. It can also help you as a worker identify ways in which you want to grow your career, because it gives you back a little bit of energy and a little bit of space and a little bit of exposure to something new, and a little bit of dabbling in a new space that can help you identify, oh gosh, I want to grow in an area that I've learned about, because now I'm accessing this AI tool. I have more information and more results than I had before. The next step is something that looks really interesting to me, and I've got time to think about it and time to consider it. So I want to move towards that direction. So I do think the story is more often going to be, it's taking the annoying stuff off my plate, or it's giving me a 10 to 15% jump start on the thing that I still have to do. AI can't do it without me, but it's given me this great jump start. So it'll take me less time to do it, and I can spend more time making sure there's more quality to the thing that I'm doing, that there's more value inherent in that thing that I am delivering, whatever that deliverable or that thing is that we're giving to somebody else. So I do think that concept around displacement is, we are not seeing that nearly as much as we are seeing lift. And I think that's, maybe an important way to think about it. If you've got a new colleague at work, chances are they're bringing lift to your team, right? So if you continue the analogy of AI as a trusted colleague, I think that's a nice way to think about that.
So I agree. I like the comment again. I'll reinforce what Wendy said, that it's about replacing work, not workers. And so as we think about, and again, the question in the chat around, concrete examples, how should manufacturers start to think about their strategy? Should they be breaking down different jobs into, let's identify types of work? And so what are some of the types of work that manufacturers can look at to say, let's figure out these? What are those types of examples where no matter what your function is, you have that type of work? And so Kim, you gave some examples of crossover shifts, right? And stuff like that. What other things can manufacturers look at to help identify this?
I would say new employee onboarding. One of the consistent themes that we've heard at every MLC event is that there is a shortage of workers in the workforce, and there is a growing number of very senior workers that are exiting the workforce in manufacturing. So there's never been probably a greater need for onboarding new employees very, very quickly. And that is a fantastic place, irrespective of what type of manufacturer you are. That is a fantastic place to lean in to AI, generative AI, to help speed to success your employees, for sure. Kim, what else
Great.
have you seen or can you think of?
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic one. And I think there's all kinds of, to your point, around hybrid things using machine learning or machine learning models and things, using sensors to understand what's happening in a plant, and then using that to embed that in onboarding information to help people really understand what the job is, what it looks like and it feels like. Using that to translate the wisdom of the group that is retiring to the next level that needs a lot of that wisdom. I mean, I just think there's lots and lots of opportunities there. There's a ton of opportunities there. The learning space is a huge one, right? And I think AI, generative AI, is one that's going to continue to change that landscape pretty dramatically.
I know one of the things we saw in the past was we had conversations that nobody reads manuals anymore, right? In our generation, we would say, well, we watch YouTube or a TikTok video. And I think it's shifting where we're not going to watch a YouTube video. We're actually going to go ask GenAI to summarize and then highlight those key areas. So all around those learning opportunities, and there's so much material, it helps us find the right material.
Steve, that's an interesting point. And one of the things that I think we talked about in a prior MLC conference was you're absolutely right. There is a ton of training material out there. Maintenance logs, product logs, equipment information, and catalogs. What's important to remember, though, is when you're building generative AI solutions, generative AI is good at ingesting certain types of information, primarily text information. And if your training logs and your training information and your videos and your manuals, if they have lots of visual cues that are really fantastic for human eyeballs, those may need to be reworked so that they can be computer consumed, because generative AI systems, at least today, based on where we are in the current state of the technology landscape, aren't that great in ingesting arrows and photos and embedded text in diagrams. So make sure that when you are making assumptions about how quickly you can build GenAI solutions around any kind of information, but primarily training manuals, that you're putting some thought into, are my training documents well set up for leveraging generative AI?
Great point. So I'm going to bring in one of the questions that just came into the chat that builds off of that. So besides that piece, one of the other things we've heard is, with so much data out there, AI can hallucinate, right? Especially Gen AI. So how do you make sure, beyond the videos, but how do you make sure when it comes to employee safety, we're actually pulling the right information and getting the right content and the right, so that way we're not training on something that's going to be dangerous for our employees. So how do you tackle hallucinations specifically around employee safety?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the good news is that we have come a long way in the last 2 years since the launch of ChatGPT back in March of 2023. We've come a long way in our knowledge and tools to be able to minimize, and in many cases, actually eliminate hallucinations. But the important thing is you have to think about it and bake it into your solution when you build it, right? So you can build special controllers that govern what type of answers go back to your end user. So in some cases, for example, if you have a persona, let's say that my persona is I am someone who works in finance. I have access to certain data that someone who works in HR might not have access to, or someone that works in manufacturing engineering. We might have 3 different sets of data. And what you wouldn't want it to do is, if you have an HR persona, to ask a manufacturing engineering question and have it give you some answer. Or heaven forbid, you're a manufacturing engineer and you ask it a manufacturing engineering question and it makes up the answer. So you can put and build into your solutions limitations and governance around the types of answers that it can, the types of questions it can answer based on your persona. And we actually did that for a banking client, where we had different sets of personas for different types of users that had different access based on the type of information they needed. And there was a controller in the middle that governed what answers you could ask and what answers it would give back. So it might say, I don't know anything about manufacturing engineering, but but feel free to ask me a question about HR. So bottom line, that was a long way of saying, we've come a long way, baby. And the technology is finally there to give you the tools to help minimize and prevent hallucinations.
Thank you. That's helpful. And again, designing things consciously is important.
Yeah.
So I want to build off of the Gen AI conversation a little bit more. One of the things that we've talked about, and Kimmy mentioned, was the role of leaders, and Kimmy, when you talk about learning in parallel, but how will Gen AI specifically change that relationship between leadership and the shop floor, right? Will it, will it enhance the relationship? Can it harm the relationship? And how do we make sure it's really working alongside to build trust, transparency, and a stronger relationship from the shop floor to the leadership team?
Yeah, Steve, great question. And I'm going to harken back to something I think I hope I get your quote right, but it was trust and transparency in AI can only happen in a culture of trust and transparency. I think that's actually one of the key points to think about when you think about the type of relationship that you want to have between your workforce and its leaders. That is a cultural decision, right? It's a decision that you make. It should affect every decision you make inside a company. You should decide who you want to be, and you should make sure every decision that you make and every system that you put in and every tool and policy and everything points directly to those decisions that you made around the culture that you want to have in your organization. Because it is all of those things that create that culture. The decision to use AI, how to use it, where to use it, who to give it to, who to train on it, how to train on it, how to make it available. All of those things are things that point directly to the culture of your organization as well. So yes, it has the ability to strengthen the relationship and the culture inside an organization. And yes, it has the ability to harm that relationship and the culture inside an organization. So really being thoughtful around what are you using this tool for, and how do you want to make that new trusted colleague, where do you want to set that new trusted colleague loose inside your building or inside your workforce to work with your people. That level of intentionality and really being thoughtful about bringing it into your organization is key. We have AI because AI is cool and bright and shiny is a terrible strategy. I mean, it's just kind of a rotten plan. It works great if you're a regular human being out there in the wild and you happen to put ChatGPT on your phone, and you just kind of want to play with it because it's a bright, shiny new tool that might be helpful to you. That's great. But when you're talking about manufacturing things that power the world that we live in, and when you think about manufacturing things that power the world that we live in, or the things that we consume that keep us healthy and move us forward, your intentionality around what you're doing to that workforce is really important. So I think, the first thing I'd say is it can do either. Use your energy for good instead of evil is what I would say on that front. The other thing I would say is setting the stage or the context is really important. So talking about AI as in terms of a trusted colleague that is going to give you lift in your day-to-day job has a completely different feel and lands on the workforce in a very different way than AI is coming in and it's going to create a 20% decrease in our overall cost of goods sold. Those are really different messages. They land very differently. They create trust or distrust very, very differently. They may be the exact same thing. You may be implementing the exact same thing in the exact same way, but how you talk about it, the context that you set, and how you support your workforce through it is really changes everything about what it feels like to be in there or to be in that workforce, and how you are able to continue to compete for, as Wendy said, a very significant shortage of workers and person power and resources in particular in the manufacturing industry.
Yeah, Kim and I, you and I have talked about this before, where not everybody responds the same way to the same message.
Mm-hmm.
So two people who come from similar backgrounds, have the same education, maybe even have the same interests, may not respond to AI the same way. And we have to just be okay with that, because that is just a fact of life, right? So I love your point about, there are multiple ways to message the role that AI will play, and you may have to take multiple message tactics to make sure that you're talking to the different types of audiences that may look the same or act the same, but they don't feel the same. When we talk about new technology, feeling comes very much to the forefront, right?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, Wendy, you and I have talked previously about You know, people used to be afraid of the streetlights because they thought it was a spirit that had entered something and could do something terrible. Well, think about the messaging that you need to help people understand that this new spirit in the streetlights is really something to help light your way home. But everybody's going to feel differently about that, and everyone's going to move across that curve of feeling differently about it at their own pace and their own schedule.
So I just want to bring back one of the things we got from the data in the pre-survey, right? So we talk about the importance of having this strong messaging around AI, yet only a third of the folks who responded are learning about AI through their company, right? Through a structured company education.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we balance that, right? When we think about education, we usually think about it in terms of training for use. Where does this strategy conversation fit into the education piece? And should they be the same? And how do we dovetail that to move forward?
Wendy, do you want to, I was going to say, do you want to talk about literacy and
Yes.
all that?
So leaning into AI literacy is so near and dear to my heart. I am so passionate about it. And Steve is smirking because I say it at every single one of the MLC events that I participate in. Please lean into literacy. And if your workplace is not offering it, lean into it yourself. I will tell you, again, going back to that same quote around financial performance that I mentioned earlier, where executive leaders that get exposed to AI literacy programs improve their companies, improve their financial performance by 20%. Well, there was a similar study of workforces. And for what I will call low maturity AI workforces and organizations. For low maturity organizations, as it relates to AI, those that implemented an AI literacy program were 43% better in financial performance than those that didn't. That's a whoppingly huge number. So, now don't lean into literacy just because Wendy says so. Lean into it because there are real dollars attached to it.
So let's just kind of build off of this. So we know Gen AI, we're starting to see the value. One of the things that's coming after Gen AI or on top of Gen AI or with Gen AI, I don't know how you think about it, are the role of AI agents, right? And agentic AI. And first of all, I'll ask, well, what does this all mean? But how are AI agents, how are they starting to make an impact today? And where do you see that role evolving? And what does that mean for decision making, both in the C-suite and the factory floor? So what is this shift to agents going to look like?
Well, let me start by defining it, if that's okay. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I cannot walk down the street without hearing somebody say agentics, agentics, agentics. So let's just pause and talk about what it means. So generative AI is primarily used for surfacing knowledge and information. When you take generative AI and you up-level it to agentics or build agents that use generative AI, think about what that word means. An agent has the ability to take action on your behalf. That's all an agent is. Now, instead of surfacing information and telling you what you could do or what you should do, now the generative AI solutions, the agentic Gen AI solutions, have the ability to ask you, do you want me to do it for you? So that is what agentics means. It's moving from insights and information to action on your behalf. And it doesn't have to be autonomous action, right? So we don't have to think about agentics as it, makes its own decisions based on its own information, and, nary shall you ever see it. You certainly can get to that point, but really look at it again. We're going back to that same human and AI partnership, right? Your agent is your partner to take action on your behalf where you have given it permission to do so. So I'm sorry, Steve, what was the second part of your question? Is where are we seeing it working?
Yeah. So where do you see this now starting to play a role? And what does this mean for the future, both at the shop floor and the C-suite?
Well, I think agents can be really, really valuable in areas where you need to make very rapid safety-related decisions. So, like I said, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. Wildfires are something that we deal with all the time. So, a very, relevant to me example of an agent could be it detects an issue or it picks up on a wildfire alert and can take action to disable your part of the power grid or whatever it is in order to act quickly for the safety of humans. And I think that example, while it's not manufacturing, safety is a big, I think, topic of application in manufacturing spaces as well. When you need to act very, very quickly in order to affect and impact the outcome at hand, agentics can be a great option there.
I think, we see that, again, toxic gas monitoring has been around for ages. We see fire alarms in our factories where, there's a fire alarm or toxic gas, the factory, shuts down, alarms go off, fire departments are called. Expanding it to other forms of employee safety, also sustainability is an area where we're seeing monitoring power. How do we, if tools are sitting idle, how do we quickly shut power down and or adjust the power flow or water flow, et cetera. So that's an interesting way to look at it, is around the safety issues. Kim, anything else there?
The only thing I'd say is I was with a client today, happens to be in the public sector, but part of their responsibility is making sure that all of the companies that work inside that particular, authority can work. Right. So if you think about systems access, if you think about uptime, if you think about switching to backups, if you think about, all kinds of things that happen in your electronics and systems, that's another area where you don't have to wait to call the person on call to analyze the information that's available to them, to then make a decision, to then take the action, within boundaries that you can customize very heavily. All of those things can happen virtually instantaneously, which means that manufacturing plant that happens to be located inside that particular municipality doesn't suffer in any sort of way. Or there's, traffic control lights might be able to be adjusted in a way to accommodate for safety, or large things that are happening with movement of large goods that might, block a street or whatever that might be. So there's a lot of different things that are specifically directly inside manufacturing, and then all of the things that sort of surround manufacturing as well and affect their ability to get their jobs done.
And like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be an autonomous action.
Right.
So let's take, for example, pricing. You may have a pricing agent that notices, hey, by the way, the cost of X raw material has gone up. It might make sense to raise the price of the finished good by Y. Do you agree? And whoever manages those decisions can say yes, and then the agent takes action and goes and executes it in the system. So it can be autonomous. Sometimes that makes sense. And sometimes it's an aid to the humans to get insight faster, quicker, and then take action so that the human then can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's a great way to narrow down the should I's for an individual who's making a decision. So rather than you relying on the fact that you've seen this particular thing 62 times, we can say, we know from our machine learning and our experience that, this is one of three things. It's most likely this first one. The fix for this first one is X, Y, and Z. Do you agree? Is this what you think we should do? And off you go.
So to build off of that, as we think about moving from historical data to making more prescriptive and proactive decisions, without getting political, right? We know there's tariffs now, right? How can we be using AI, for example, to say, well, if the tariffs happen, here's what it could mean to my supply chain. Therefore, here's the actions you could take. So when tariffs are turned on, you're better informed, how can we start thinking about how to be more prescriptive, proactive, and ready for the uncertainty that's out there using AI?
Well, I think it's a beautiful circle right back to the very first part of our conversation here, where, one of the, I think, most important ways that leaders in manufacturing or anywhere can use AI is as a thought partner. So scenario analysis and evaluation and saying, okay, I am the CFO for a large, heavy manufacturing that uses a lot of steel, blah, blah, blah. How might tariffs impact my cost of goods? Or how should I think about, based on having manufacturing plants in country X, country Y, and country Z, how am I going to be impacted? It's a way to evaluate, Steve, just like you said, it's a perfect example. Evaluate what ifs using a thought partner so you don't have to rely just on your experience alone. Generative AI can bring experience from all over to help you not only get the answers that you don't have experience, but help you ask the right questions. That's another great way to leverage generative AI, is to say, I'm worried about this. What kind of questions should I be asking? I'm worried about tariffs. What kind of questions should I be asking my CFO? What kind of questions should I be asking my supply chain leader? What kind of questions should I be asking each of my different manufacturing plant and plant managers? So.
Mhm.
Great
It
point.
also, because of the speed with which so much of this can be done, it increases your ability to do more complex modeling and scenario planning and things like that. So you could get more in-depth analysis done with the same staff that might have been overburdened by trying to do something that you would up level 2 or 3 times. Now you've got those individuals they're using their big brains and their experience to add to that, rather than spending as much of the time literally doing the crunching, right? So you're redeploying the big brains of the humans as well there too. We used to think of that in the early days of RPA as moonshots. What could you do if you could make things go so much faster that it wasn't prohibitive from the capacity of the humans that you had working on something.
All right, fantastic. Well, we're just about out of time here, so before I ask you to kind of share your final thoughts, one of the things that kind of came to me was the idea of, again, replacing work, not workers, and really building back to the idea of that trusted thought partner, be it for a new hire on the factory floor or an executive in the C-suite. How do you kind of develop that and focus on the work, not the workers? And then building that trust. So Kim, we'll start with you on final thoughts, then Wendy, and then I'll have a final few announcements for the MLC.
So the first thing I'll say is, yeah, what he said. That's a great way to sum up. I think is probably two of the most important things that we talked about. Is it is about the work and the task, not the worker, and the contextualizing of this tool as a trusted partner and a trusted colleague kind of fundamentally changes the game when you think about how people react to it. So then the last thing I would just say, and I think we're preaching a bit to a choir here, but encourage yourself, your leaders, the people who work with you, the people who work for you, to experiment. One of the things we found wildly successful is to create sort of a community where people share their ideas and how use of this technology has been really impactful or helpful to them. I know I wasn't particularly good at being curious about it till I started hearing other ways that my friends and colleagues had used it. So create that community and share ideas. Maybe host a weekly contest with your favorite colleagues who came up with the best idea that saved them the most time, or the most unique use case of GenAI or ChatGPT. So make sure that you have some fun with it as well, because having that fun with it will encourage you to take more serious actions with it as well.
And I think in addition to those points, I would add two things. First of all, certainly AI can help replace the work, not necessarily the worker, but make sure you're banking what that work you saved, that productivity, make sure you're banking it and not letting it just dissipate into the ether. And one of the ways to do that is absolutely to start thinking about higher order value creation opportunities to reinvest your time, to reinvest your energy, and to reinvest your conversations, to Kim's point about having a community. How do I now think about up-leveling the way that we use AI? And I have a quote here. It says that by 2027, 55% of industrial manufacturers will diversify their product portfolios with IoT and AI-enabled digital products that will create new revenue streams, up from 20% in 2024. 2027 is not that far away. I know we're talking about the future of manufacturing. That's not that far into the future. Are you going to be in the 55% that actually does that? Or are you going to be in the 45% that gets left behind? Please don't wait. Don't be the 45%, okay?
All right. With that, we have one final question. I apologize, we don't have time for it, but Thomas, we will include an answer for everybody, not just for you, but for everybody in the email when we respond. So we will get you an answer. Again, apologize, we ran out of time. A few final things, though, to let you know of. We have some upcoming activities related to the future of manufacturing. We have an AI-powered Factory of the Future survey as part of the Future of Manufacturing program. You can scan the QR code, or again, we will send you the link afterward. Again, getting more information to understand how people are using AI, how they're investing in it, and where do we see opportunities coming. We also have coming up over the next few months our plant tours. This is something that the MLC does. Phenomenal ways to learn about what works in manufacturing 4.0 across various industries. The Schneider Electric Tour in Monterrey, Mexico in April. There's a few spots open, so please scan the code and join us. And the United Scrap Metal Tour in Chicago is coming up as well. The signups for that will be coming shortly. And there'll be more events coming. And if you're interested in hosting a tour, please reach out as well. Finally, registration is open for Rethink. This is our premier event every year where we talk about everything going on in manufacturing 4.0, case studies. We have think tanks. It's a great chance to just learn, to network, to partner, to figure out how do you grow your manufacturing 4.0 strategy. And we have our gala for the Manufacturing Leadership Awards, which is a fantastic opportunity to learn from the best in class about what people have done. And with that, please be on the lookout for additional content and sessions around the AI-centric Factory of the Futures and the Future of Manufacturing project, as well as incredible content and a new GenAI report from NTT Data. All of this will be delivered to your inbox, including an answer to that final question, which we didn't get to. If you have any other questions or want to reach the MLC or Kim or Wendy, please send a note to mlcinfo@nam.org. And we look forward to seeing you in person or online at our next event. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Cheers.